SEMO head coach Tom Matukewicz, the team coming off a season opening loss to FBS Kansas State. They'll have their home opener. They're going to host Lindenwood. That is the first conference game of the year, too. The brawl for the fall. What is it? The battle for the
brawl.
Thank you. My tongue is tied this morning. The second year we'll have that and with the trophy this year. So, Coach, thanks. Just some thoughts on your team after week one, and we'll go to some questions.
Yeah, one thing that I wish I'd have mentioned was how appreciative we are for our fans to travel. There was a really good section there, and I wish we'd have gave them a better game to see, but we appreciate the fans that went to Manhattan. You know, at the end of the day, you know, it's my job to just try to sift through everything and try to find some good takeaways. And you know, the bad is we had too many mistakes. We call them missed assignments. We got to do our job, do it well, then let it go, and we didn't do that. And so the other part of that was we weren't able to run the ball, and they ran it on us, and you know, obviously that's unacceptable. Two big good takeaways for me was the turnover margin. It's hard to win the turnover margin. It's really hard versus K-State. They were top 25 turnover margin team last year. And when you can't protect and you can't run it, usually you're -3 or 4 that game. And so offensively did a great job taking care of the ball, defensively doing a great job of taking it away so far. And so excited about that. And then the other thing was I feel like my team proved that they are coachable. You know, this was a tough trip, a tough weather thing. We had a really good game plan for hydration and those type of things, and they executed it well. There are several things that I asked them to do, and they got it done. And so at the end of the day, if we can win the turnover margin and we're coachable, that will serve this team well. So we're turning the page. It feels like we're just now starting the season. You know, when you open up with a game like K-State, you're just trying to understand a little more about yourselves and get through the game and get ready to start what I would say our true season is, and get to open up at home, open Hauk versus rival. This is a big game for lots of reasons, and so I know our players are going to be excited, and the community as well.
Perfect, Coach. We'll go to some questions. We'll go Tom first and then Jake. So, Tom, if you want to go with your questions, go ahead.
Well, Coach, good morning. And before I forget, what's the status of Bryce Norman's shoulder?
Doubtful.
Okay.
It was a holiday or whatever yesterday, and so we weren't able to get anything done. He saw the doctor today. They have to schedule an MRI, and then we're waiting to hear when we can get the MRI back.
Okay. You mentioned Lindenwood's a big game. Do you view this as a positive that Lindenwood came into your conference and they're a competitive program? They have a lot of strengths to their program. Or from a competition standpoint, is this a negative because it's just one more hurdle that you have to leap over every single day in your job?
This is definitely a positive. And I think one of the things, like what you brought, but also for each community. Mm-hmm. You know, last year our community enjoyed going there. A lot of people from St. Louis, so it is by far a positive. Their resources compared to ours and facilities and all that, that's just, you know, at the end of the day, I'm a Division I football coach, so I'm going to play good teams week in, week out. And so I'm the one that brought up playing for a trophy. I want to make this game a big game. But you know, I think in the fandom standpoint, they think we're going to win. They think, hey, they've only been Division I, and you know, as you know, they beat Central Arc last year. You know, they're a good team. They're coached very, very well, and so we just got to make sure that we understand that we're going to get Lindenwood's best, and their best is really good.
Now, you obviously this is a home game this week, but you have a lot of road games this year. How was the maturity of your team handling the so-called business aspect, the business trip aspect of going to Kansas State? Did they show maturity that you believe, hey, this team is capable of going on the road and handling their business?
Yeah, that was what I was referring to earlier about being coachable. Really tough road trip, really tough conditions. And so we really educated and talked about what it takes to be successful on the road. And they did it. I mean, they did it well. And so that just brings that trust. And now I'm really just excited to coach my team. I know some of our problems, and I love solving problems. And so it's good and bad that you got these problems, but it's good that they're identified. Now we can go to work.
Last year, as far as the receiving core, you really had kind of a three-headed monster. This year, Ryan and DeMaurier showed very, very well against Kansas State, but there wasn't really a third guy there. Who are you looking to take that next step and kind of be a third attacking player out of the receiving core? Could be a tight end, could be a wide receiver, could be a running back out of the backfield. Who do you want to be that third weapon to make it really difficult on defenses?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. We need that third guy to step up. Dalen was questionable. We ended up, he wasn't able to go. So hopefully, see if he could practice today. It's kind of a pain tolerance thing. And so he's in there, Kyron's in there, Didi, he's 6'7", all those type of things, but we haven't really put it together there. And Klinkenbeard is a guy that has put a lot of really good snaps in there. And so he's also competing for that. But that's one of our keys to victory as a staff, is make sure we're playing the right guys, and developing that third receiver is important.
Okay, last question for me. Typically Bryce leads you in tackles, but he had limited playing time. So Jodrick, if I'm pronouncing that correct, Lewis, Joe Edrick, leads you in tackles. I haven't really spoken to you very much about him. What do you like about him? What's his strengths, and what's his potential for this year?
Well, he's had as probably as good a fall camp as anybody. He really has. He's a DB that has all the things you want in a DB, from speed and athleticism, but he's tough. He'll hit you. He's our backup punt returner. He could do things with ball in his hands. And he played safety and corner in K-State. So he's a bright guy. I think he's an all conference DB for sure.
Okay. Thanks, Coach, for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Jake, go ahead with your questions.
Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
I'm awesome.
All right. So I wanted to know, how long did it take to move on from that week 1 loss? I know you mentioned week 2, you feel your team is really starting the season now. How is that playing right back, and have you guys, put that aside now?
Well, it was that bus ride home. So we got home at 6 a.m. And, that's the reality of our level, that, you're going to get a check for $600,000, and, that's a part of it. We really try to focus on 24 hours. We don't want to not learn our lessons, but we don't want to still keep thinking about K-State. And ultimately, I think Lindenwood and SEMO, there's still even though we both played one game, there's still a lot to be known about our teams, and so, we're looking forward to solving some of those problems and seeing, where this team is at versus a league opponent, a quality opponent.
You mentioned it was your idea to kind of start this big game brawl trophy. How did it come from? Where did it come from, and what excites you about this rivalry?
Just Jed and I, we're at the OVC meetings or whatever, and I just said, hey, what would you think about playing for a trophy? And I feel like he liked that idea, and then we just ran it up the chain of command. And both universities are embracing it. It is a trophy that's sponsored by MRV Banks. And so, one of the reasons why I think this is good, because this just makes sense. Our community, their community, it's a really good game. It's recruiting. It's all these things that fans can get into. And so I'm just excited to compete against a coach like Coach Dugard and a team like Lindenwood every year. And I hope they're glad they're in the OVC, because I think we are.
Or do you feel your players might have a little more incentive to try to, hey, win this trophy and keep it on campus type of thing?
They should, that means something. You can't have we could still have a good season and lose to Lindenwood, but we can't have a great year and lose to your rival. Like at the end of the day, we have to beat Lindenwood if we want to have a great season. And so this is an important game and we're treated as such. But one thing that you got to make sure as a mature competitor, you can't make it all about your opponent. The best chance for us to beat them is to play well. And so that inward focus has still got to be the priority.
Do you think this rivalry has could be as intense one day as the rivalry you have with the Salukis?
Yeah, I do. I think they're committed to being great in football, and I think we are. I think SIU is, to have regional institutions like this compete. I just think it's a no-brainer. It's really what is so sad and missing from major college football. Pretty soon, people next door won't even play each other, which is insane. But I think the fans and the communities will embrace all these games, and the records and all that don't mean. I mean, when it's a rival, I know we're going to get their best, and I think they're going to get our best. Like this is intense, as it should be.
You mentioned coming home a moment ago and, having the home opener and having that renovated and renewed. I mean, what do you think the excitement level is for your team to play on a field that they played so well on last year, and now they're going to do it kind of with a facelift?
Yeah, I think it's going to be emotional, and we should have a sense of pride. But also, there's got to be a sense. There's a burden here. Like there's been program changing wins here. I mean, we have first round playoff victory on that field. We snapped Jacksonville State's 36-game win streak. Like there has been some unbelievable games on that field, and it's the burden of 2023 roster to carry that tradition. Like when you play at Houck, it means something. It's got to mean something to you. Like you can't lose at home. We're trying to raise money. We're trying to build facilities. We're trying to have sellout crowds. Well, it's our responsibility to make sure that product looks like a product that people want to support.
And then finally, for me, you mentioned winning the turnover margin and being coachable were the two things you took out of that trip to Manhattan coming back. Do you feel your team will be back where it should be now that they're at home and got that kind of first game under their belt type of thing?
I think you don't go from 0 to 100. What I want to see is progress. If we don't make progress in the things I'm talking about, I'll be concerned. But you're not going to all of a sudden go from 100 mistakes to no mistakes. We just need to see really good progress. I think it takes 21 days to build a habit. I think it takes 3 weeks to really get your team, significantly improved. And so that's our goal.
And I guess one final question: that game against Lindenwood last year, obviously you guys almost put a 50 spot on them, but have you gone back and watched that tape, or is that irrelevant now because it's a year old?
No, we watch it, and we watched their game this year. Those are significant. I mean, you say we put a 50 spot, but it was a game, the whole game. I mean, it was in 2 scores for even in the fourth quarter, so it was a ball game. And so, now they got another year recruiting, another year being Division I. They know SEMO now, and so I'm sure they're going to have great game plans to try to make us play left-handed.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate the time today.
Tom, you got one more if you can make it quick.
Real quick, you have the former Lindenwood quarterback on your staff still, correct?
Yes, sir.
What has his role been this week and going through the scouting process for Lindenwood?
It's very interesting. I didn't want to hire him. I loved him as a competitor. My staff wanted to hire him, but I had to be convinced. And we really respected him as a competitor. And ultimately we hired him because I wanted our great players to be around other great players. And so that's why we hired him. And his roles on defense, he's been pretty siloed at quarterback. He only understands the game from that lens. And so we're trying to develop him as a coach and try to get him to understand football on a broader level. But he's not an on the field coach. He's doing more learning of how to be a coach right now.
but he can watch Lindenwood film and say, this is why they do this and this is why they do that. And, or maybe your coaches can figure that out anyways.
Yeah, again, it goes back to that. You got to be careful about making it about them. I want to make it about us. What is it that we got to do better?
Okay. All right. Thanks,
Yeah.
Coach. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate your time. Best of luck, and we'll talk to you again next Tuesday.
Sounds good.